Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of More Perfect Marketing. It's David Baer here. Today, we're going to be talking about, I was about to say the word that we're trying to avoid, and that's the F word. No, not that F word. It's funnels. And when we get there, I want to point out why funnels are both a very positive and appealing concept, but also we're going to dig into why they may not be the be all and end all of bringing new customers, clients, patients into your business, and maybe how to look at it a little bit differently. Now, this funnel concept is actually not new, although it's been popularized over the last, I don't know, decade and a half or so, because of all of the technology around funnels. But if you think about it, you look back to, a century ago, there were funnels from an ad in the newspaper to a response to maybe you mail in a coupon and you get something in return. There's an order, a sequence of activities that lead up to somebody first having an interest in solving a problem or addressing a desire, and ultimately finding the right solution for what they're after, and how the business that's behind that offer that they're making controls as much of that interaction and discovery process on behalf of the prospect or the client as possible. But over time, audiences, the public, the consumer has become much more sophisticated and has seen a lot of this out there, and maybe there's been a little bit more skepticism or reduction in trust that's crept into the process. Well, that's really what we're going to be talking about today. And thankfully, because I'm aware of, but not the expert on this topic, we have two guys who are, and they know this deeply. And that's AJ Rivera and Mike Schmidt, who are joining me from, I don't know where you guys are. I was going to say Phoenix, but I don't remember. Is that true?
Close.
Almost.
Tucson, Arizona. Many people
All right, I
confuse
got the right
it.
state.
Here we are.
Anyway, so there you go. There's my intro. I hope I did a justice to the stuff that you spend your waking hours thinking about and dealing with clients to help support them through.
Yeah, absolutely, David. There is a little bit of a love-hate relationship with funnels, definitely with marketing in general. And every business on the planet and everyone that we come across, they want some of the same things. They want more leads. They want better clients. They want those clients to invest more dollars when they spend. And they want those clients to be happy. And so there's those universal truths that, I think you hit on in your introduction, that they've been around. The process of attracting clients has been this really the same game forever. It's just different applications and different tactics and things that have come about.
So before we get into what you guys are doing now, I want to sort of talk a little bit about where you came from and how you got here. And I mentioned before we hit record that I actually, years ago, probably a decade or more now, had purchased one of the programs that you offered to professional marketers. You were in the marketing agency space for a while. Why don't you tell us sort of a little bit about that background?
Yeah, AJ and I have kind of like very different backgrounds, and it's cool that we've kind of merged into joining forces here today. I graduated from college and went straight into business ownership. I had the background of building websites, and so as a ploy to stay here in Tucson, so that way I could remain in the band I was playing in, and was dating a girl who would become my wife. There was no prospects in 2003 for a web designer in Tucson, Arizona, so I had to create my own. AJ, though, came from a very different background.
Yeah, so I kind of followed the corporate path. I worked at Intuit for 10 plus years. Really started out in QuickBooks technical support, and then eventually grew into a position where I was managing the online communities for like QuickBooks and TurboTax and Quicken. And that's where I really got into web strategy. But over time, I started to feel more and more like a really small cog in this really huge machine, and had a hard time connecting like how the work that I was doing was really influencing anything. And so I was looking for an opportunity where I could work more closely with a smaller business and kind of really be able to see how the work that I'm doing is impacting the world.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's interesting you mentioned Intuit, because it's obviously it's the engine behind so many small businesses, and so you have um, a little of insight into some of the pains and challenges that businesses, and obviously you likely left long before their acquisition of a major online marketing tool, and that's Mailchimp. But
Mhm.
these technology pieces in business, are very familiar to younger business owners, but they're new concepts for people who have been in the space for a while. And so how did you, once you moved into the world of working directly with small businesses, what did you encounter?
Yeah, a couple of things there. Like one immediate impact was just me coming into a world in Mike's world where, he didn't really ever work for anybody else. He kind of stepped into this and, kudos to him for getting this thing going and off the ground without a whole lot of training and some basic like business acumen and understanding accounting and reporting and financials and things like that. And so when I came in, there's definitely a lot of like low hanging fruit just in terms of like, providing a little bit more structure in business. There were things that I grew up in that environment, right, at Intuit, and I kind of didn't know that that's not just how business went. And so when I came in, it was just like, wow, there's these different things that we do. Like, why don't we have agendas for meetings, right? Like, pretty simple stuff. Or, why don't we have some goals? Why don't we put together processes and start to document stuff that we're doing so it could be more repeatable? And so that definitely helped a lot with some initial growing of the agency. But then I think in terms of me then moving into more of a web strategist role, working more directly with other small business owners, that's something I felt super comfortable with because when I was doing technical support at Intuit, that's exactly who I dealt with, right? I was dealing with the business owner who was probably staying late because he's having trouble running his books and had some questions and figuring it out and was too busy during the day to do it. So like I understood the stress and the struggle that small business owners go through. And it was really easy for me to be able to talk to them. And one of the things I realized is that those guys are just asking for help, right? And we always joke that Mike kind of tricked me into sales because he posted this position for a web strategist, and I was like, cool, I know web strategy, right? That's what I do day in and day out here. And what he was really looking for was somebody to come help with sales. And if he would have put web sales or digital marketing sales, like I 100% wouldn't have applied. But what I didn't realize is that that's kind of what I was doing. That's kind of what sales is, right? I've got these small business owners who want the same things. They want more customers, they want more leads, they want more revenue. They're asking experts like us for help. And all I'm really doing is providing my opinion, right? And recommendations and consulting them on that. And either they want our help or they don't, right? It's kind of just as simple as that.
Mike, anything to add about sort of when you started working with clients and saw some of the challenges that they were dealing with? We talked about reputation a few minutes ago, and obviously that became a big focus of the work that you were doing. What did you see out in the market with the businesses you were supporting?
It's like every business wants some of the same things as we were talking about before. Like they want to grow, they want to be bigger, and as AJ pointed out, like I was one of those business owners that didn't have the goals and didn't have the structure, and so as a business, like we kind of came. It's an interesting time if you think about it. In 2003, it was before Google was not the top search engine. We were not carrying smartphones in our pockets. YouTube wasn't around. It was a different time altogether. So like, at that point, it was fairly easy to hang my shingle and be like, I can build these websites for you because like in fact, the newspaper locally wrote a article about me. It's like web designer prepares for whole new strategy. And it's like me hanging out, this really funny picture of me in the newspaper. Because it was such an innovative and new thing, but that didn't last super long, right? Like it's certainly not the world that we live in today. And the kind of things that we're helping clients with now, and that is a big opportunity is how to help them attract the people into the world that they could do business with, and help those people raise their hand and ask for help. Right? And I don't know about you or the folks that might be listening right now, but I was not born a salesperson. Right? Mm-hmm. I didn't get in, and just like AJ said, if I would have put sales on that job posting, we would never have met. We wouldn't be talking here like this right now. I got in the business of what I do because I liked that thing, and I think that's probably true for a lot of local and small business owners, that they got into that business because there was something they were excited about. It just so happened that they also had to sell things, right?
Yeah.
I think most businesses are confused between the difference between a lead and a prospect, right? A lead is someone who's kind of top of that funnel. They might be in your target market, but they haven't yet expressed interest in the service that you offer, right? A prospect is someone who stopped being a lead and became a prospect because they're now asking for your help and they're in your sales process. I think too many businesses do marketing and they generate leads and they're like, it didn't work. The leads sucked, right? It's terrible. I didn't get anything. Too many tire kickers, too expensive, all that. Well, guess what? I have news for everyone here. All leads suck. It's almost by design. Like, leads are terrible, right? The reason why they're terrible is because they're not yet prospects, right? And I think that was a massive aha moment for me. And if the people listening haven't had that aha yet, let's have it right now together. It's that when you understand that there's a difference between the lead and the prospect, you can treat your actions differently, right? So I think too many people give up on lead generation too early because it hasn't turned into results yet, right? But they also have not done anything to make those leads warmer and get them to ask for help. So the idea is that we want to go out to the market, however that happens, whether you're running TV commercials or you're doing brochures or you're doing, Facebook ads or SEO or any of those things. Like, the whole job of all those things is to generate leads, right? And get them into your client and customer database. Step 2, which is the part that most everybody on the planet either sucks at or doesn't do at all, is warming up those leads, right? And building a relationship with them, right? If I walked into your office right now, David, and I was like, hey, do business with me, you probably would call security or call the cops and be like, get the hell out of here, right? But if I sat down and we had and built a relationship, have a conversation, that's a stepping stone to us potentially doing business together. And I think in person, it makes 1,000% sense, of course.
Yeah.
But online, we're being rude as all hell to each other online, and that's why I think that's why funnels and online marketing in general gets a bad reputation, because people are churning and burning because there's no personal relationship. My challenge to everyone listening is, I want you to take, if you have an email list full of people you've done business with or people in the past that have asked for help, I want to ask you, when was the last time you sent an email to them, right? And I'm not talking about the newsletter thing. I'm talking about when was the last time you had a personal email and asked them how they were doing, right? And asked them if there's anything they need help with, right? Most people, I think, and marketers are to blame for this, have ruined email marketing because they just blast and they blast and they blast, right? But what if you sent an email that was just something really simple, like, hey, David, haven't talked in a while, and I just want to let you know I'm still here doing this thing, and this is what I'm up to. Hope you're doing well, right? What kind of results might you get from that? If you're anything like our experience, that stuff works all the time. Email marketing, I think we look at it as that we're standing on a stage and we're speaking into a lot of people, which is technically true when you're sending out, you mentioned MailChimp earlier, right? When we're sending out an email blast. Yep. But what if you just change your attitude and pretended, and you wrote the email as if you were writing it to one person, right? You're still standing on the stage, but you're having all these micro conversations with all these people in the audience, right? That's how you turn a lead, right, into a prospect, right? And I think everyone here, they could probably, if you hate money, don't do this, but send an email, a simple email, as if you wrote it to one person, but send it to everyone on your list, and just be human and don't have any agenda or anything to sell. Just open up the door and the lines of communication. And that's how you turn a lead into that's one way you turn a lead into a prospect. And that was the biggest aha that I had, and it's changed everything else.
There's a bunch to unpack there, and I just want to circle back to 2 points there. The phrase that you used, "be human," I think is something that is so important. If you go to any of the many direct response copywriting books I have sitting behind me, right, it's always talking about that lesson of tap into the way that you're writing is one-to-one, and it's emotionally focused on what matters to the recipient, not the jargon in your business, etc. Right? So that's piece number 1. Piece number 2, and this goes back to the point, AJ, that you made earlier. There is a lot that comes from the corporate world in terms of systems and process and a structured approach to things. And so, Mike, as you were talking about this idea of difference between a lead and a prospect, and I was thinking, the first time that I went to a small business and I taught them the concept of MQL, marketing qualified lead, versus SQL, sales qualified lead, and
Right.
what you do in each of those relationship points and how they differ, right? And you can build a process around that.
Mhm.
They were saying, wow, that's a lot to do, but then they recognize the value of it. And I think that's exactly what you were just talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Mike always talks about this idea of, these word of mouth leads that we get. And the idea that this is what, when people go out there and do lead generation, what they really want is that hot lead that's already warmed up and they're ready to buy something, right? And they want to compare that to the cold lead of somebody that just saw an ad online or somewhere. And then they want to compare those two and say, well, this isn't working. And what most people don't understand is that every lead goes from cold to warm to hot, right? And that's what you're talking about with these marketing qualified lead versus sales qualified leads, is that, the sales qualified lead is somebody that came through your door and guess what? They got warmed up, maybe not by you, right? Maybe not by something that you did, but they asked somebody, hey, do you know somebody that could build a website? And this guy that they know, like, and trust said, absolutely 100%. You got to go talk to Mike. He built my website. His company's amazing. And then they were ready to go, right? And
Cold to warm to hot happened like that.
Yeah.
In a quick conversation.
And so when you're looking at these other types of leads that haven't been qualified, in any way, just understanding that they still need to go through that progression is a big deal, right? And you can start to understand how you might talk to somebody differently there. And start to communicate what makes you different from somebody else, why somebody might want to work with you, what things you actually offer. We make the mistake of assuming that because somebody's on our list, that they know what we do, right? And they know who we are. And a lot of times that's just not the case. We've had lots of cases where, even a client that maybe we built a website for calls me up one day and says, hey, AJ, I need the login information for the site. And I'm like, oh, really? What do you need that for? Well, I hired somebody to help me with my SEO. And I'm like, what the heck? We do SEO. And he's like, oh, you do? Like, I didn't know that, right? And I just assumed that they do, right? And so we have to constantly be talking about those things. And that's what email is great for, because we can share those stories. We can share those wins. We can share the case studies. We can talk about different trends that are happening. Google's always changing stuff, right? They're changing the game. And we can continue to have that conversation so that people are understanding that this is what we do, right? And we're continuing to nurture that relationship in that way.
Yeah, it's about repetition, right? And I think most businesses are doing a terrible job at repeating the things that they do over and over again because they get bored of that, right? Would it be all right to share a quick story about that, David?
Oh, absolutely. And then I want to get back to that F word that we were talking about earlier and how that enters into all of this as well.
Of course, I'll make this quick. So a couple months ago, I was driving down the road, heading to my local coffee shop, and there was a box truck driving next to me. And on the side of this truck, it said Acme Food Distributors. And I was thinking, that seems like a really strange name for a food business. Now, David, when I say the word Acme, does that ring any bells for you? What does it remind you?
Well, I think of Saturday morning cartoons.
100%. Looney Tunes, Roadrunner, Coyote, right? So I did a little research, and did you know that when I think it was Chuck Jones was the name of the guy who created that cartoon. He had a Bible, a series of rules that he published that was like, here's how we make this cartoon. It's got to happen in the desert Southwest. The coyote always chases the roadrunner, not the other way around. And if there's something that is in the cartoon that is not naturally occurring in the desert, it has to be obtained by the Acme Corporation. What's your impression of Acme Corporation? Is it a good company? Is it bad? Is it high quality? Is it low quality?
Well, I would say it's reasonably generic and therefore doesn't really have a reputation of good or bad. It's just there.
Okay. So one of the rules was that any product obtained from the Acme Corporation must fail comedically or never work as intended, right? So that's why when you had the spring trap loaded up, that suddenly, it wouldn't work the way you intended. It would go backwards and get the coyote, not the roadrunner, right? Like, the anvil somehow defied gravity and went the other way, right? It never worked right. And so here I am looking at this truck. I'm like, why on earth would they name themselves such a, like, in your words, like neutral, let alone like really bad terrible name. So I dug further. There was if you look up the definition of Acme, it actually means the best, pinnacle, the peak, right? It also starts with A, so a lot of businesses used it because they would be at the top of the phone book, right? And so the question is, how did the word Acme go from meaning literally the best to all of us feeling like it's the worst? Well, the answer is repetition, right? It's not like the cartoon was like at the beginning, notice Acme means terrible and it's not a bad thing. No, they just showed us and demonstrated it over and over again. Furthermore, Google has something called the Google Ngram, and it tracks the word usage of words in the English language over time. 1949 is when the Roadrunner cartoon premiered. Now let's be clear, that word was already like declining in use already, but once 1949 hit, it hit a pretty significant downturn, right? So we stopped using it. And I think that the lesson for every business owner listening to this is, if you want to be known for something, if you want to get known for the thing that you do, you best repeat it again and again. People aren't paying attention. In this world of smartphones and all these screens in our faces, we have so much coming at us, and you have to say the same things. And the biggest risk is saying too many things not often enough. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think that's the thing that we can all take away. Like, say it again, say it again, say it again, say it again. Right. There's a reason why my logo is here, here, and there. Right. There's a reason, because we're repeating it. Right. And by the way, yeah, back here too, probably 2 more times, like in this screen. Right. Like, that's not by accident. That's on purpose. And I think that I think this should make it feel easier for business, because, gosh, I don't have to come up with new things. Yep. Just say the same thing you already done. There's something that worked for you already. There's maybe some advertising you've done that's worked already. There's maybe some offer that you've made that's worked already. Just keep doing that and do that. And if you're getting bored of it, that's not a good enough reason to stop doing it.
We hear from people who talk about content creation, particularly social media content, that the best content is exactly that. Saying the same thing 1,000 different ways is a phrase I've heard a lot. By the way, before we move on, I just want to point out that not only is repetition really, really effective at driving home a point, but as Mike, you just did so eloquently, a great story also locks in, right, an image and a concept really well. And so thank you for demonstrating that. We'll have to have you come back and talk about storytelling as an effective communication.
I'd love to.
Yeah. That's
so,
good.
okay. So I want to just sort of talk a little bit about technology and how that's taken over in the way that we look at marketing. The first one that I'm going to point a finger at, and I'm pointing a finger at them in part because their CEO is going to be a guest next week, but also because I happen to be a certified partner with them, is the folks over in Chandler in your state who got in very early in the automation process. And so a lot of the idea of marketing technology and follow-up and stuff, and the ease of automation has also made us lazy, right? But now you guys are working with a guy who's up here in the Pacific Northwest and has really brought the idea of technology around funnels and steps in a sales process to a place where it's incredibly popular. Some might say the acme of no, I'm sorry, that's the wrong.
Perfect. That was a perfect example. I love
that. Here. So in general, I think technology is great, but it also hinders the way that we tend to operate as human beings. Getting back to the point that, like, we don't necessarily want to follow that process. Sometimes we want to extract ourselves from what we're being led through, maybe investigate a little bit, maybe do our own homework. So you've started to recognize this as a bigger problem than I think most marketers have, and you've attempted to address it. And so let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think if we think about like businesses that are funnel driven businesses and businesses that are really trying to automate some of the steps that are involved of taking somebody that's cold and turning that into a sale, or and not having any human interaction, there's some steps that have to happen there, right? And there's been a lot of people that have been successful with that. I would say early on, especially when there weren't a lot of people that were doing this, it was pretty easy to put something up there, have a great story, and it result in a sale, right? And what happened is, what happens a lot of times is then a whole bunch of people jump into this space, some of which might not really be experts in things and can make various claims that they are and that they have this thing that works, and they go out there with this message that's just like unrealistic, unreasonable, and they're okay with doing that because they're just not legit, right? And they're looking to make a quick buck. What happens with that is then people start to become more skeptical about anything's ability to produce a result, right? And we've seen it time and time again where somebody saw a great video and they saw his great salesman, and it's like the snake oil salesman, right? That sold them on something and the thing didn't get the result. And now they're feeling burned by that, right? And I think anybody in the digital marketing space has probably dealt with a customer that's been burned in some way, in some service that they've done. And what happens when that skepticism exists is at the end of whatever your sales process is, whether you took them through a VSL or you took them through a landing page that had all this information, or maybe you had a webinar, or maybe you had an in-person seminar or something where you took them through the process, if they haven't reached what Mike and I call the trust tipping point, then they're going to start to do their own research, right? And so the trust tipping point is that moment in time where somebody's desire for something turns into absolute certainty, right? And we've all experienced it. It happens with every purchase that you make. Maybe you're looking for a car and you've been shopping around, you finally see the one that you want, it's the right price, has the right features, and you're like, boom, I'm getting it, right? Or you've probably been on Amazon and you're experiencing a problem and you're looking for a solution to that, and you're reading through the reviews and you finally found one where that person has the same exact issue that you have, and they said this thing works 100%. You're practically like running up to the buy button to buy it, right? So those things are what's existing now, and how people are forming an opinion about whether they're going to buy or not. And so because this skepticism exists, people kind of turn into like these lawyers, right? Where they're trying to build a case for whether they should buy something or not. And a lot of times they don't care what the result of that is. They just want to feel confident knowing that they made an informed decision. And so what do? Maybe they go out to Google and they search for Mike Schmidt, or maybe they get more advanced. Is Mike Schmidt legit, right? Or is our agency Anchorwave legit? Or they might type Anchorwave scam, and they're trying to dig up dirt, trying to figure out like, gosh, this thing sounds really, really good, but is it? And can I find something that either supports that or proves that maybe I should put my credit card back in my pocket, right? And so understanding that that's part of the sales process is something that Mike and I have really dived into, helping these people, right? Because for so long, funnel builders and funnel driven businesses were okay with just getting the hot buyers, right? The people that went through that process and they said, this is good enough, this sounds good, they put in their credit card and that's great. But what we see is that's only 4 to 5% of the people that go through those funnels, right? And trust me, there's been a lot of $1 million businesses that have been created from just that 4%. But what about the other 96%, right? What about those other people that searched for you online and didn't find anything? Or searched for you online and saw like a ripoff report, or searched for you online and saw that you have a 2.7 in Google, and they're like, okay, I'm not going to do this, right? And so understanding where they're looking and what you need to do to control the sentiment that they're feeling, I think is a big part that most businesses are missing. And that's true if you're running funnels or if you're a traditional business that's not doing that, right? Maybe you don't have a funnel, but you just took somebody through your sales process in person and walked them through why you want to be their attorney. And they're like, oh, this sounds great, but let me go search online after and look at their Google reviews, right? Like Amazon's done an amazing job of teaching everybody how to shop based off of reviews. And now we're seeing that show up in all the different decisions that people are making, especially when they're trying to make a buying decision.
So, okay, we've talked a little bit about, the advancements in technology have allowed us to control all this. And you've just talked, AJ, about the human behavior, but also the advancement in technology that's given us as consumers access to do all this stuff that maybe even 20 years ago we couldn't do as easily as we can now. So I understand the typical funnel-based, online-based business. Maybe it's a course, maybe it's a coaching program, that sort of thing. The offline brick and mortar type businesses or professional service world, there's a slightly different approach, although they can absolutely do a lot of what you're talking about. I wonder if you have one or two, quick thoughts on how you address the landscape that you've just described in that world.
Yeah, I can tell you one example. Like, first off, this is something that I experienced and I started realizing is that when I was first selling websites for Anchorwave, I remember in the early days, the first couple of years, at the end of every proposal, it always went the same exact way. Somebody would say, "This sounds great. Can you send me 3 references and then I'll get back to you in a few days?" Right? And that was their attempt to say, "Cool, can this person even give me names of people that I could talk to, that I could verify, have a business that they've done good work for?" Right? And so they were still trying to check off that credibility box. And then somewhere along the line, I noticed that they stopped asking for that. Right? And they stopped asking for that because they were doing that before they even got a hold of me. Right? They were looking at our reviews and determining, okay, is this a legit company or not? Because I don't even want to have a conversation with them unless I know that they are. So there was a company that we were helping to build their online reviews, and it was a local catering company here in town. And she reported back to us. She's like, "I got the biggest catering job I've ever gotten in my life." And I asked the person how they found us, and they said, "I searched for caterers in Tucson. You had the best reviews that I could find, and I knew that we had to work with you." Right? And so that's an easy way to influence that, and understanding that pretty much everybody's doing that check, right? They're just doing it before they get a hold of you. And if you're not paying attention to your reviews on Google, on Yelp, on the Better Business Bureau, on any of these other sites that are out there, then you're probably missing out on a lot of opportunities that you don't even know about, right? Because you didn't even make it past their very first check.
All right. We are at the end of our time together, and I want to make sure that folks understand the area that you guys play in and how you can be of help to them. And I know that you had a resource that you were going to make available to our listeners as well. So why don't we take just a moment to talk a little bit about the area that you guys are focusing on now? There's a lot of benefit to thinking about marketing, business development differently than the things that are just being sold to us. And I love the approach that you guys are taking in addressing so many of these other areas. What can folks learn from you beyond our conversation today, and what do you have for them?
Yeah. So depending on who's listening here, there's maybe a couple different things you might be thinking. If you are like a professional services business, or the business that's trying to attract these leads, and you want to be more credible, and you want to turn your leads into prospects, and you want to create more traction for yourself there, I've got a resource for you, and a community and a training that I think you could really appreciate, which we'll put at the link at agencycoach.com/more perfect. And if you're an agency owner or in the marketing space, or just someone who's potentially looking to get into that type of business, I also have a training talking about some of the business opportunities around helping businesses get more 5-star reviews. And more than that, how to help businesses implement some of these same strategies. So that'll be at the same link, agencycoach.com/more perfect. And we'll see you over there. And then, of course, if you guys got questions, you can always reach out to me on Instagram. Mr. Mr. Mike Schmidt is my Instagram handle. Feel free to send me a DM and we can say hello.
I have to get an Instagram account if I want to communicate with you.
Yeah. You can find me on Facebook too. I'm everywhere, but all good.
Well, fantastic. We will make sure to have those links in the show notes, of course. Mike Schmidt, AJ Rivera, thank you so much. This has been a fabulous conversation.
David, appreciate being here. Thank you so much.
Thanks, David.
Indeed. Folks, you've been listening to another episode of More Perfect Marketing. If you know somebody who could benefit from listening to the conversation you just heard, please share this with them. Till next time, I'm David Baer. Bye-bye.